everybody. I am Elisa Vitti. I am the founder of Flow Living, and we are celebrating, which is so hard to believe sometimes, the 10-year anniversary of helping women recover from hormonal issues naturally. To celebrate, I'm leading a series of conversations with some of my favorite female founders, athletes, activists, and women who have been on their hormonal journeys just like you. And we're here to just talk about why it's important that you understand your hormones and how they work, to remind you that suffering is optional, and to educate you on why and encourage you should be taking action for your hormonal health care every day. Joining me today is Becca Tobin. Becca is an actress known for one of my favorite shows, Glee, an author, and one of the hosts of the Lady Gang podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, Becca. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honored. I'm such a fangirl of yours, and every time I get to talk to you, I feel like I'm talking to our day and age is Einstein, brilliant, like I'm like blubbering because I just love talking to you so much. I learn
Oh my
something
gosh.
every single time. I feel proud to be a woman. Anytime we get to have a conversation.
Oh, I love that. Well, the fangirling is mutual, so it's all good. I mean, I want to just get right into the juicy part here, which is, we're here to talk about everybody's hormonal story, and I'd love to have you share like what your experience with navigating your hormones, experiencing symptoms, how has that been going for you? How have hormones impacted your life so far?
So I have had a relatively easy time with
Great.
my hormones. I've had bumps in the road for sure. And definitely it's taken me 37 years to really get to a point where I understand my body, thanks to you. But when I started puberty, I was dancing 5 days a week. I was a really active kid, and I suddenly went through puberty like we all do. And I would have a week of just the most tender, swollen, like a full cup size, my breasts,
Mm.
and dancing every day in a leotard and feeling insecure about that instant change, like overnight. And then the actual excruciating pain of moving through anything physical, like it was, whether it was a brisk walk or I'm dancing and jumping up and down and partnering with boys. I remember just being in like just tears, and asking my mom about it, and she's like, oh, that's what happens, that's right before you start to get your period, like that's PMS. And I'm like, oh, how wonderful. So I had that like my entire early teens, early 20s, and then I went on the pill because some gynecologist said that those symptoms would be relieved if I was on the pill, and which was so false. And instead, my breasts got so large. Like I look at pictures now of me in a bathing suit in high school, and it looks like I had implants. I'm a very small chested person naturally. And I just remember being like, this is an evil pill. Like, not that anything's wrong with the big breast thing, but I was like, this is more painful and more
Mm.
uncomfortable. And this doesn't feel intuitively like this is what my body wants to do. Cut to my sister, who was on the same type of birth control pill, suffered a pulmonary embolism in her early 20s. And that was when all of those connections were being made of the birth control pills and the class action lawsuits regarding
Wow.
blood clots. And so my mom, thank goodness, was like, and the doctors were like, everybody get off. Everybody, we don't know if this is a genetic thing. We don't know what, but we know that the birth control pill is not going to help. So I came off of that pill, and I'd been on it for several years and had just sort of like gotten used to this new body I was in, this new mood swings. And the mood swings were something that it is like I have memories of screaming and feeling like an insane person, and
Mm.
finding out later that that's actually not who I am. It was just sort of the hormones coursing through my body that maybe shouldn't have necessarily been there. So to make a long story short, that's I have gotten it under control over the years by kind of not being on any kind of birth control. Your book, In the Flow, was something that was the first book I had ever read that was educating me in any way, shape, or form on what was happening even in my body at every moment. And the community of the Lady Gang. I work with so many women and hear from so many women who are just so confused by what we have now, these like weird blanket statements of like, it's hormonal. And I'm like, okay, doctor, but then what next? Or this is a hormonal imbalance. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know what that means. I don't know how to fix that. What's imbalanced and how do I get back in balance? And am I just always going to be like a psycho before my period for 10 days? Or is this something I can fix on my own? And so that's a long way of talking about my hormonal stuff. And I have a whole fertility chapter in
Well,
this.
let me pause here because I think it's really important to underscore the fact that you started out by saying you've had you had no issues, right? And
Right.
because but you did.
Yeah.
You did it.
Relatively speaking.
But any issue is an issue. Like, what are we
It's
here to
true.
like, it's not a competition of which issue is worse.
Yeah.
But I think that really speaks to the conditioning we receive at a young age, which is to tolerate suffering, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, is to just really point out the fact that you have to become almost like a detective in your own psychology of like, where do you say these things to yourself? Like, oh, it was fine. And then it was fine that I was having all these issues on the pill, and it was fine. And like, I just, you kind of keep allowing this to happen, but it's a choice that we're making to believe that in the first place, and then not to, figure out what else we could be doing at the same time.
Right.
To your second point, it's incredibly confusing to try to get help. So I'm curious, tell us a little bit about the fertility part, because I know that sort of also has really changed so many things about how you and what you speak about even to this day.
In a major way, for sure. I, like so many other women, you don't hear the good, bad, the ugly of pregnancy and fertility. You hear the beautiful stories and the beautiful pictures and the glowing mothers, and all that is a wonderful thing to show, but we also don't talk about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And for myself in particular, I lost a couple pregnancies, and my second one in particular was the first time that I sought out a psychiatrist, actually, because I was in the only word for it was, I was in a depression.
Yeah.
I was sunk into this place that was, I had truly never been before. And I was talking to this wonderful woman who specializes in female reproductive psychiatry, like kind of in that, any woman that's in that phase of her life. And I said, something is wrong and something is broken, because I am in my first trimester, which I know isn't always a cakewalk. I was pretty sick, and physically it really kind of sucked, for lack of a better term. But this depression is something that is so scary to me. And it's just, I was not prepared for it. Is something wrong with me? And that was the first conversation that, I started to get curious about what was happening to my body at that time. And when I did, and I was actually getting information regarding what my hormones were doing at that point in the pregnancy, it was less scary to me. It actually made sense. And so when I was sitting in my dark bedroom, not wanting to see anybody, talk to anybody, eat anything, I actually, after having that, being empowered with that information, I just kept saying to myself, you are okay. You are not broken. This is your body doing what it needs to do right now. And this isn't forever. This is not permanent. And and it was hormonal. And so that was my first. I did end up losing that pregnancy. And I went on to start fertility treatments, and I did an egg retrieval that was relatively, quote, easy, but like you say,
Yeah.
like, how easy is any of this?
Right.
I had a successful egg retrieval where we created embryos. That was really like such a win for us. And I think at that point I was ignoring anything, any symptom, any physical, any emotional, because I was just so ready to get to that finish line. And then my body freaked out when we did the progesterone shots to prep my body to transfer the embryo. So, better than anybody, I had no idea. I was such a novice with all this fertility stuff that, the progestin shots are to tell your body that it's pregnant, because you're artificially impregnating yourself. And so it's trying to have you keep the pregnancy so that you won't lose that embryo and your body accepts it. But my body was not accepting the hormones, the synthetic hormones. And I tried to push through for about 4 days. And 2 days before the transfer was scheduled, um, everybody pulled the plug because we just couldn't figure out what was going on with my body. And there was really like no explanation there either. People kept saying, maybe you have COVID, maybe this is, and that was the beginning of being a little gaslit because I knew, what, like, it's like when you get food poisoning, you'll start getting sick and immediately what it was that made you sick. I don't
Yeah.
know what that is. I would do my shots in the evening and 5 to 6 hours on the dot, like between hour 5 and 6, I would wake up unable to stand up straight, shaking, my body shaking uncontrollably, fever, crazy fever. And I've just never, I was like, I think I need to go to the emergency room. I'm a pretty tough person. This is horrible. That happened enough times. And then I was told enough times that I probably had a virus at the same time. So
that's frustrating. I mean, just facts, sharing some facts. I mean, synthetic hormones, right? They don't have the exact receptor site match. It's like a lock and a key. When you make your own estrogen and progesterone, it fits exactly on the receptor site in the cell. When you take synthetic progesterone, whether that be in birth control, which obviously didn't work for your sister, or if you're doing this sort of synthetic progestin shots, for some women, they react really profoundly to that mismatch, right? And I think if you had been just told that as opposed to sort of like told that it was it's frustrating when you're told that it's like, oh, it couldn't be that.
Right.
But it was that you were having like almost like an allergic reaction to that hormone, that synthetic hormone. And obviously that was a non-starter for the transfer.
Yeah. And so that was when we made the decision to go the route of a surrogate. And I'm so grateful, and I know that was the path that we were supposed to be on, and that's the way that we got our son. In hindsight, I think I would have done more investigating. I think I would have sought out more answers. I was impatient and just ready to get my baby here. But that's something, I went on message boards, I went on these, all of these things. And it was like, no one ever even validated. You're right. It's the shot you're giving yourself every night. I don't know. Like they could even say, we're not sure the solution, but to just say that is probably, from what it sounds like, most likely causing you to feel this way. So that was really, it was hard. And since then, it's just been educating myself and having conversations with women going through similar things. And that's all we can really do. But I think
it's so important that, and incredibly brave that you share this story with everybody. You give people permission to feel good about whatever path their, baby is coming through, because I think, especially in the wellness world, there's a lot of judgment around, did you have a vaginal birth versus even a C-section? I mean, it's like, we don't need to be doing that to ourselves, right? It's really important to support yourself and support each other, however these things have to go, however they have to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And I think also just to put the picture frame around the fact that you were trying your best to get help, to get support, to follow the guidance you were given. And it was challenging. It was challenging to get the information that you needed. It was challenging to get the result that you wanted. And you really had to do a lot of self-navigation. And that was just recently, it's 2020 something at this point, right? And we're still in this situation where it's hard to find information. It's hard to get answers. It's hard for women to connect the dots as to like, what is exactly going on with me, and why can't anyone just tell me what is going on with me? I know that was true for me 20 something years ago when I was dealing with my PCOS. And it's, one of the reasons why I had built this company in the first place was just because I couldn't believe that was my experience. Right. Like I found that very shocking. And then I just made this sort of commitment that I would build a platform that would just sort of prevent that from happening for other people. So, unfortunately, there are 3 billion women suffering from hormonal issues. And we have so much more to do. Even though we're celebrating 10 years, there's so many more women to help in terms of understanding that there are some dots to be connected, and this can be better for you. I want to switch gears a little bit because you've had such an interesting relationship with your cycle, being on medication, being off medication, doing the whole IVF thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you first heard about cycle syncing through the book In the Flow, which was before we spoke, before we connected, how did you feel when you kind of were absorbing that information for the first time? I know I've often been told by women, everybody has like a very emotional reaction to being presented with this information. So I'm curious how it felt when you first heard about it and how you've been incorporating it into your life since.
So I first heard you on another podcast. And it was, someone had mentioned your name. We have a friend in common who's this incredible branding expert wizard, Linda. And I think that's maybe where she brought your name up to me. And I listened to you on this podcast, and I will never forget where I was. I was on a walk. I know exactly where in my neighborhood, there's a little cutoff where you can actually get into woods and like be not around houses and cars. I was in this little wooded area of the neighborhood listening to the podcast. And it was like just with every like 10 steps, it was something new, some new information. And my jaw was dropping. And then I was having these moments of light bulb where, intuitively, I think women know a lot of this to be true, but we are not acknowledged or, validated or whatever it is. So it was the first time that I was like, oh my God, our bodies aren't like men. And we have all of it, it's the vital sign. I remember you saying it's another vital sign. And being like, of course it is. Like the thing that our body is doing every single month, if you're regular, is incredibly more complex than what a man is doing, in his body. So that blew my mind. And then you got into really detailed conversations about the phases. I had no idea there were phases. I just figured there's PMS and then you bleed and that's it. And you can cramp and your boobs get big and sore and you're bitchy to your spouse. Like that was all I understood of the cycle.
Yeah.
And so and then down to the eating, down to the exercise, and again, it's all intuitive. The fact that I am craving more food certain times of my cycle, it just gave me this, like, I don't know, pat on the back to say, you were right. Yes, you should be eating 200 to 300 calories more during this time and not feel bad about it. Not that we should be feeling bad, but like I'm human. I'm a woman in entertainment. I have guilt around calories. I'm working through it. And actually, you have helped me so much in that. So just being given the permission to take care of myself like that because it matters was really empowering. And it just, from there on, I was insatiable. I downloaded the app. I told everyone around me about this app. Anybody that told me they were having anything related to hormonal issues, I was like, you were like Jesus. And I was just one of your,
oh my
people
God.
walking the land. And, like to be totally dramatic, but it did feel like this major moment in the history of women's health that I didn't know existed was happening. I'm just so passionate. Obviously, I'm very passionate about it. I hate seeing women suffer. I hate seeing women get told they're wrong or not listened to at all. And having something like this and access to like a resource like you is just, it's the best thing ever. And our community, the Lady Gang community, once we introduced you to the Lady Gang community, they're like rabid for more information.
Oh my God. I just on that, I for years was like, oh my God, the Lady Gang, it's so cool. That podcast is the coolest podcast. How would I ever get on that show? And then I just loved how it all worked out.
Then we were begging you.
I've been like fangirling the show for so long. I just thought, I love how you guys have used and what I loved about the show is that you really used your platform to really go there, to really talk about like everything in very nitty gritty detail, no holds barred. And I was like that, those are my kind of girls. So I just love how you've been doing that for a long time with your own platform. And I think that's true. Like when you go through something so personal about your own health and You know what could have maybe been different, even if you can't fully picture what could have exactly been different, but you know it could have been maybe better if you had only had some information. Women respond to stress by tending and befriending, and I think you guys have done that so beautifully at the Lady Gang, of really building a community, of really making sure women feel like they're getting useful information and feeling validated. And I just think it's so fantastic and important that you have been really helping add to the cultural shift around this topic. So I love just being in community with you around that, because, you know, we need all hands on deck to change the narrative at this point, you know.
Well, it takes three. I mean, the three dummies that we are, we do need you to do that. We're like, we don't know we can't explain it. We can't be, you know, eloquent about it, but we can bring you the people, the right people who can. And that's just, we're really grateful.
Oh, well, you know, as we sort of wrap up here, what do you want women to know about dealing with hormone issues? If somebody's listening right now and they've got something going on, whether it's with their cycle or their fertility or whatever's happening, what would you want somebody to know?
I feel like I've had this conversation with a couple girlfriends. It can be really overwhelming. I do know that people, and thank goodness we're all having more of these conversations, but you can also become very inundated with everybody's opinions. And there are a lot of people in the wellness space who are pretty like confidently wrong. And that's dangerous. Granted, I know intentions are all good, but the reason that I was so drawn to you is because I mean, you're a genius, but
I don't know about that, but
well,
I am a person who is the most passionate about your period that you will ever
yes,
meet. And I am absolutely on a mission to infect you a little bit with the enthusiasm that I have for your hormones, for sure.
yeah,
That we can definitively say.
for sure. And I also think that you are doing as much work behind the scenes and have done as much work behind the scenes, and like really knowing and learning the body and what's going on with it. And it's scientific, and it's comforting to know that this is a platform that I can trust, that I can, even if it's somebody who's just wanting to baby step it, I say download the app. I'm like, just download the app.
I haven't even had a chance to tell you, but to celebrate the 10-year anniversary, we're now making the app free to download. I know, it's good.
Wow.
I know, I'm really excited. Just go to myflowtracker.com. You can download it for free. You don't have to choose between this app and another app. You can just have them all, have whatever you need, but definitely get this one, because what's new about it is now, because we've been listening, you know, I'm really just wanting to build the platform that makes dealing with these things as easy as possible. So you can now just put in all the symptoms you're having, any issue you're having, anything you're confused and concerned about, and the app is going to tell you what could possibly be happening at the root cause level that is creating that symptom for you, and then help customize a care plan for you to help you walk out of that symptom back into balance. And so really it's the first tool to help you take care of this fifth vital sign. It's not period tracking is one thing, but that's not enough. We need to, like you said earlier, like, okay, we have a hormonal thing. What do we do about it? And so this is the tool that helps you get into action around what is happening with your symptoms. And we made it free because we want everybody to have access.
It's awesome. Well, I mean, that's just so much of why you're doing so well. And I think that people are really gravitating towards you. It's a genuine mission. And it's just, like I said, I send everybody to the app, and now I'm very excited to tell them that it's free.
Well, thank you so much, Becca, for sharing your story. Like I said at the beginning, it's so important that we talk about things. And I encourage everybody to listen to the Lady Gang podcast, because, it's really contributing to changing the narrative around women's health and other issues. At Flow Living, we're trying to trailblaze a new path forward for hormonal healthcare. And it's definitely been a decade so far, and we're just getting started, it feels like, and I'm so excited to have this new offering. So definitely check it out. And thank you, Becca, for being a part of the celebration with us. It means so much to have your voice in this conversation.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations.